Hey everybody, welcome to the Calitraveler podcast show. I'm your host, Paul. Once again, welcome to the Calitraveler podcast show. I'm your host, Paul. To be honest with you, I had no idea what I was going to discuss in this week's podcast, but I've had friends and family back home in the States constantly asking me about the COVID pandemic here in Thailand. And I thought it would be a good idea to share my experiences as an American expat living in Thailand during a global pandemic. So in 2019, authorities in Wuhan, China had told the world about a new coronavirus that was emerging, which has now been called the SARS coronavirus 2. It will take time. It will take a lot of effort by the World Health Organization. At that time, a lot of students at my university were deciding whether to remain in Thailand or go back to their home countries. And a majority of them went back to their home countries. I almost thought about doing the same as well. Was declared over until the pandemic. However, in the US, the situation was really bad. As it stands right now, there are currently 7.8 million cases and 215,000 deaths. The situation in the US, I had seen a constant rise in COVID cases back home. First, New York was the state that had the most cases, and then it just started to have a domino effect, and cases were on the rise everywhere back home. Kept trying to decide whether to remain in Thailand or go back to the US. And I had looked up plane tickets, and plane tickets were extremely expensive. I mean, we're talking at least $2,000 one way. And I had talked to my family about whether to come back or stay in Thailand, and they said, what do you think would be the right decision? They said, honestly, the situation here is not good. Probably should stay in Thailand. And then I looked up the number of cases in Thailand and realized they were considerably lower than that in the US, and decided, you know what, I'm going to stay here in Thailand, which I did. And it was actually a really good decision that I had done that. I ended up, and then in early 2020, my university staying here, was taking all my classes on campus as the situation back home had started getting worse. And this semester was also online as well. So the past 2 semesters, can't take being stuck at home during the pandemic just because I'm a very social person. But however, during the pandemic, social distancing is the new norm. And it's something that has kept me and has kept others from getting sick or worse. People have asked me, what's it like as an American expat being abroad during a pandemic? And honestly, it's, for me, the same as being back home in terms of like norms. I mean, I'm doing the same thing that I was doing before. The one thing here in Thailand that's a lot different than compared to back home is everywhere you go, you got to wear a mask. But now whenever I go out, I maintain social distancing. If you don't wear a mask, you're not going to be allowed in. Simple as that. And here in Thailand, whenever you go to the malls, whenever you go to restaurants, you go to any like 7-Eleven, for example, they have to check your temperature, which I have no problem with. I'm not sick. And if me taking my temperature is a preventative measure, let's say like I was sick or somebody else was sick, I think it's a good thing. Being alone and so far away from your family during a global pandemic, you know, it did take a psychological toll on me for a while, but luckily I contact my family every week. That ended up fading away fairly quickly. And basically I just live my life out of the ordinary. I can still carry on with my daily routine, but however, have to be practical about it. So usually I will only go out when it's necessary. The situation here, though, is getting better. Things are starting to open up more. And in fact, next semester, we're going back to classes on campus, which is great. I definitely miss my friends. I miss the classroom. I missed being able to be on campus and create memories for myself and memories of my friends. So for me, this is very exciting to go back to campus. But again, still going to maintain that social distancing when I'm. It's been a very interesting experience, and the fact that I'm overseas during a global pandemic, it's definitely an adventure within itself because you're literally in a place where you've got no family and you're basically surviving on your own. And, it's perhaps one of the best experiences I've ever had being abroad and being able to live on my own and experience the beauty of life, even through the darkness of a global pandemic, mentally and emotionally. Because through this pandemic, a lot of people have lost critical thinking and have lost, definitely helped me grow, their minds literally, because they don't know what to do. They don't know what to expect. But however, you just have to tell yourself that it's going to get better. And that's what I would tell myself. I remember when the pandemic was first declared, I was scared, just like everybody else. I would watch the news and I would hear about the rise of cases in Singapore and then in Malaysia. And then when you heard about the cases that were in countries that bordered Thailand, you think, oh shit, what next? And there were a lot of people that were scared. It is not a situation that's ever easy to deal with. What you have to do in situations of pandemics is you just got to keep calm, keep positive, and tell yourself that it's going to end. The pandemic will eventually end. There's sacrifices that we have to make, like social distancing and closures of places such as movie theaters and restaurants. But remember that these closures, as bad as they are, it's what will help us fight this pandemic and be able to go back to the norm. If we can get through this together, nothing is impossible. So I'll say this to my audience, that no matter where you're at in the world, whether you're in Thailand, US, or anywhere else, just know that everything's going to be okay. Things take time, but as I always say, great things happen to those who are patient. Podcast can be heard weekly on my YouTube channel, so subscribe to Calitraveler 93, as well as liking my Facebook page, Calitraveler 93, and the podcast will be available on Spotify and other platforms.